Good morning, Shindo here. Now, I have said this on several occasions. Watch North Korea. North Korea is a microcosm of what's going on in the world. And they have conducted their fifth and largest nuclear test to date. They keep learning from their mistakes. Don't think if they shoot off a missile and it only goes a few feet and blows up that somehow they are, don't worry about them, just forget about them. People learn from their mistakes. If they learn from their mistakes, then they'll continue to make missiles, nuclear weapons, and they will combine the two. It's only a matter of time. There's nothing that's going to stop them short of putting ground troops into North Korea, which is not going to happen. And when they have a nuclear-tipped missile, they are the most likely people on this planet to actually use it. North Korea conducts fifth and largest nuclear test. This is from Reuters. Seoul. North Korea conducted the fifth and biggest nuclear test on Friday and said it had mastered the ability to mount a warhead on a ballistic missile, ratcheting up a threat that its rivals and the United Nations have been powerless to contain. The blast on the 68th anniversary of North Korea's founding was more powerful than the bomb dropped in Hiroshima, according to some estimates, and drew condemnation from the United States as well as China, Pyongyang's main ally. Under 32-year-old dictator Kim Jong-un, North Korea has accelerated the development of its nuclear and missile programs despite UN sanctions that were tightened in March and have further isolated the impoverished country. You see, not only do they have nuclear weapons, but they're poor. And just wait, they're going to be pushed into a corner where they won't have anything to lose by firing a nuclear-tipped missile at its southern neighbor, South Korea. South Korean President Park Geun-hye in Laos after a summit of Asian leaders said Kim was showing, quote, maniacal recklessness, unquote. Maniacal. He's crazy, all right. In completely ignoring the world's call to abandon his pursuit of nuclear weapons. U.S. President Barack Obama, aboard Air Force One on his way home from Laos, said the test would be met with, quote, serious consequences, unquote, and held talks with Park and with Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, the White House said. China said it was resolutely opposed to the test and urged Pyongyang to stop taking any actions that would worsen the situation. It said it would lodge a protest with North Korean embassy in Beijing. North Korea, which labels the South and the United States and as its main enemies, said its, quote, scientists and technicians carried out a nuclear explosion test for the judgment of the power of a nuclear warhead, unquote, according to its official KCNA news agency. It said the test proved North Korea was capable of mounting a nuclear warhead on a medium-range ballistic missile, which it last tested on Monday when Obama and other world leaders were gathered in China for the G20 summit. Pyongyang claims of being able to miniaturize a nuclear warhead have never been independently verified. Its continued testing in defiance of sanctions presents a challenge to Obama in the final months of his presidency and could become a factor in the U.S. presidential election in November and a headache to be inherited by his successor. Quote, sanctions have already been imposed, or almost everything possible, so the policy is at an impasse, unquote, said Tadashi Kimaya, a University of Tokyo's professor specializing in Korean issues. Quote, in reality, the means by which the United States, South Korea, and Japan can put pressure on North Korea have reached their limits, unquote, he said. Unprecedented rate. North Korea has been testing different types of missiles at an unprecedented rate this year, and the capability to mount a nuclear warhead on a missile is especially worrisome for its neighbors South Korea and Japan. Quote, the standardization of nuclear warheads will enable the DPRK to produce at will, as many as it wants, a variety of smaller, lighter, and diversified nuclear warheads of higher strike power, unquote, KCNA said, referring to the country's formal name of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. It was not clear whether Pyongyang had notified Beijing or Moscow of its planned nuclear test. Senior officials from Pyongyang were both capitals this week. Chinese Foreign Minister spokesman Ha Xiangying said she had no information to provide when asked if China had advance warnings of the test, and would not be drawn on whether China would support tougher sanctions against its neighbor. Although Beijing has criticized North Korea's nuclear and missile test, it has repeatedly expressed anger since the United States and South Korea decided in July to deploy the Terminal High Altitude Area Defense, THAAD, anti-missile system in the South. China calls THAAD a threat to its own security and will do nothing to bring North Korea back to the negotiating table on its nuclear program. Jeffrey Lewis of the California-based Middlebury Institute of International Studies say the highest estimates of seismic magnitude suggest this was the most powerful nuclear test conducted by North Korea so far. He said the seismic magnitude and surface level indicated a blast with a 20 to 30 kiloton yield. Such a yield would make this test larger than the nuclear bomb dropped by the United States on the Japanese city of Hiroshima in World War II. That was an atomic bomb, by the way, not a nuclear one. Quote, that's the largest DPRK test to date. 20, 30 KT at least. Not a happy day, Lewis told, unquote, Lewis told reporters. South Korea's ministry put the force of the blast at 10 kilotons, which would still be the North's most powerful nuclear blast to date. Quote, the important thing is that 5 tests in, they now have a lot of nuclear test experience. They aren't a backward state anymore, unquote, Lewis said. You know, the funny thing here is that he says they're not a backward state anymore. Perhaps our underestimating of this country and calling it a backward state to begin with was our problem as Americans. The hubris of this country. Now I'm going to talk about something that a lot of you are going to sort of roll your eyes at. But several years ago, there were these people who did this remote viewing. Now, remote viewing works. I know it works. I've done it. Remote viewing is when you can actually put yourself out there and see things that are on the other side of the planet if you want. We can all do this, by the way, and it's not that difficult to do, especially if you're someone like me who meditates every day. It's not difficult to do. I mean, it takes a little bit of training. You learn how to do it in less than an hour. In an hour, you'd be remote viewing. But there's people who are experts at this. And years ago, during a remote viewing session in which they were pressing themselves apparently into the future, time is not a sequence. It's not linear. It's not a line. It doesn't go from this space to this space to this space. So it's not difficult, not as difficult as people think, to actually project yourself into the future. Yes, I know. A lot of you think that's ridiculous. Well, that's the reason why I'm still talking about this stuff, is for those few folks who actually come on my channel who don't believe this stuff to actually try to open up their brain just a little bit, because these remote viewers saw that North Korea was going to get nuclear capability. This was at a time when North Korea didn't have the nuclear bomb. Then they projected themselves into the future, and they saw that North Korea would fire a missile. Didn't even have a missile, folks. Just a couple of years ago, the thought that North Korea could put a nuclear tipped missile on a missile was the people just 2 years ago, folks. They were talking about it, how ridiculous the idea was. Is it still ridiculous? Is it still ridiculous? Because I have been talking about North Korea now for 5 years. Not only will they get a nuclear tipped missile, they will fire it on South Korea. I firmly believe that. And not just because these remote viewers saw it when they were doing their remote viewing. It was a benchmark in the things that they saw. It was a significant event. Of course it was. It's only a matter of time. If you're frightened by this, you shouldn't be. If you're frightened by the idea of this, you shouldn't be, and I'll tell you why. Because if you're frightened, it means you're not quite right with your karma. I spend a great deal of time in meditation, and I get a sense and a feeling about things, about the way this world is going. And all I'm trying to do is be this voice crying in the wilderness. I just want people to listen. And as these things progress, despite the fact that people ridicule me, despite the fact that people treat me condescendingly, I continue to do this, and I will continue to do this. And the time will come when you'll say, oh, wow, he was right. But you know what? I don't want you to say it in the future. Because in the future, it's probably going to be too late for you to say, well, old Shindo was right. Not going to do me a lot of good. Anyway, if you like what I do, please click like, comment, subscribe, and share my videos. And you know, I don't mind if you mirror my videos. I'm not getting any money off of these. It doesn't bother me in the least, as long as you give me credit. Feel free to mirror my videos. This is Shindo. Have a good Friday.